Lead Well, Live Whole, the podcast where leadership meets life. Your host, Michael Sirmon, is here to help you rise above the noise, lead with purpose, and live with clarity. Let's get to it.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Lead Well, Live Whole podcast. I'm your host, Michael Sirmon, and I'm honored to walk this journey with you. One episode, one insight, and one breakthrough at a time. Today we're going to talk about something that doesn't sound flashy, but will make or break your leadership. And that is healthy rhythms. If you want to lead with clarity and build trust that lasts, you need more than goals. You need structure, you need predictability, and you need relational rhythm. So today's episode is titled, Build Healthy Leadership Rhythms. Don't let people wonder when or how they'll hear from you. You ever wonder why rhythms matter more than reactions? Well, let me start with one simple truth. Unpredictable leaders create unsafe cultures. If people don't know when they'll hear from you, if your check-ins are inconsistent or absent, if your communication is all urgency and fire drills, then even the best strategies will feel unstable. Because clarity and rhythm create safety, and safety builds trust. Hear that again. Clarity and rhythm create safety, and safety builds trust. And believe me, as a leader, you can do nothing without trust. So let me ask you a few questions. Do the people you lead know when they'll hear from you? Do they know how to prepare for updates, feedback, or accountability? Or are they always guessing? I'm not talking about being robotic, I'm talking about being intentional. In the same way your body runs better on sleep, food, and exercise rhythms, your team will run better on leadership rhythms. How about the first rhythm? The first rhythm really is about standing check-ins. I'm not talking about micromanagement, I'm talking about alignment. A well-structured check-in creates clarity of focus, space for feedback, emotional pulse checks, and early warning signs of misalignment. I used to travel around with my VP, and we would travel to different sites. And as we would go in, he would make his comments as he went. Great guy, really good mentor of mine, and but he would think out loud as he was going. And I remember we were in West Texas and we were walking through one of the yards and he made the comment, there was something laying on the ground, and he made the comment that this needs to go away. And then we left, didn't think anything about it. The team made it go away. Well, the next month or a couple months later when we were there, we had a chance to sell that thing that they had made go away, and he's looking around for it. And he asked where it was, and the man who was running the yard said that, well, they had gotten rid of it. And he said, what do you mean you got rid of it? He said, well, you said it needed to go away, so we threw it away. And he said, well, that's not what I meant. Well, we left, and we're talking over lunch, and he's like, I don't understand why they threw that away. And I said, because you told them to throw it away. And he said, no, that's not what I meant. I meant they needed to move that, and it didn't belong there. It needed to go away from there. I said, that's not what they heard. Well, the reality is, with a healthy rhythm of check-ins, they could have asked, did you really want me to throw this away? Did you want me to just move it from there? What were you really meaning by that? But because of the inconsistency of the or a lack of rhythm in the communication, there wasn't that venue for them. So they assumed they understood what it was that he was wanting, and they did it. And this happened time and time again, until eventually we, both he and I, became much more intentional in what we were saying and how we were following up on that. I remember back when I was in office as mayor of our community, and we were at our 100th anniversary celebration. We're having a big parade. We're doing all of that. We got all the media that's there. I'm downtown area, and there's a group of kids and people that needed direction over to where the parade was lining up, and I was headed that way anyway, so I said, just come with me. So we're walking along, and we're passing by this house that had been abandoned. And as we were cutting through the front yard of that property, a dog came out and charged at us from under the house. It was a pit bull, and we forced it back, got everybody down through there, and I was visibly shaken by it because it could have gone very bad. Well, I'm walking along, and there was one of the police officers was directing traffic, and he was a gentleman that I knew, and I let my guard down with him, and we walked by, and he said, "Oh, is everything going on?" Sudden, it looked like something's got you upset, and I just offhandedly made a comment, "Man, somebody needs to go over and just shoot that dog," and I walked away. Didn't think anything about it. And yes, you know where this is going. So I'm over at the parade lineup, and I'm doing an interview with one of the local television stations, and we hear these gunshots. Of course, that got the reporter's attention, and it turns out that the officer had gone over and shot the dog. Now, it was justified in that when the officer and the animal control got there, the dog came out and attacked them, so they shot and killed it. But the reality is, because of the lack of rhythm and communication with this individual, he only heard what I said and had no idea of what I really meant. Our goals were misaligned, right? So there are some rhythms that I would highly recommend in your environment, in your home, whatever it may be, whatever leadership you're working on. And the first one really is weekly one-on-ones. 30 minutes. And I'll tell you this, no agenda is going to mean everybody's going to waste their time. Establish an agenda. It can be very simple, right? What's going well? Where are you stuck? How can I support you? That quick, that easy. You'll easily hear what their priorities are, what they're struggling with, and then you've offered to help them. The second check-in is your biweekly or monthly team huddles. In these meetings, you're going to share your wins, you're going to reinforce your priorities, and you're going to celebrate progress and clarify projects. Valuable meeting. Again, no agenda means everyone's wasting their time. The third rhythm really is about quarterly development reviews. These are one-on-ones. They're not performance reviews. They're growth conversations. These are the meetings where you ask questions like, what have you learned this quarter? What stretch goals excite you? How's your workload and well-being? Rhythms will eliminate any ambiguity. And the added bonus is that when people know a check-in is coming, they don't bottle up concerns or drift on in silence. They don't work on an assumption. Keep in mind, these are not replacements for your normal business interactions. You're still going to have those. You're still going to have your normal daily interactions if you have a daily interaction. You're still going to have the project conversations that are happening and the different types of reviews that you do within. These are just intentional moments, protected times that you get together and you have your follow-ups. And I'm not gonna lie to you, right? I'll be very transparent. As a leader, developing this type of rhythm or not developing it, but maintaining this type of rhythm is probably one of my biggest challenges, right? Because I overpromise, I overcommit, and I don't provide that gap in my schedule that I need so when the unexpected drops in. So this time, if I'm not careful, quickly becomes overridden or becomes less valuable in my approach, even though the reality is this is the most valuable thing I can do as a leader, especially if I'm developing individuals. Which that leads me right to the next thing. Setting a consistent communication cadence. You know what? You don't have to be the most charismatic leader, but you do have to be a consistent one. The golden rule of leadership really is don't let people wonder when or how they'll hear from you. Because your words as a leader are anchors, but only if they're reliable. Go back to my examples earlier, right? Where the word said one thing, the intention was something different. So create a rhythm that works for your context. Something like Monday morning emails. Hey, here's the week ahead. Hope you had a great weekend. The Wednesday where you do your walkthroughs and you visit your departments and you listen to the folks on the floor. I personally would do a daily walkthrough when I'm in the area. On Friday, you do your wrap-ups. Let's recap our wins this week. Let's do our shout-outs. Let's do our lessons learned. And I wish I had really employed this more, and it's becoming more common, is a monthly video update. A real quick recap monthly that you send to your team and they can share with their teams. Right? It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a big presentation. Just you on a camera. And then there's team messages and voice notes, where you can send out a periodic message, a daily message, whatever you want it to be, whatever works for you, that encourages them without overloading. It could be a management moment. It could be something that's not pointing to anyone specifically, but it is an encouragement. But in all of these, just remember, it's not about volume. It's 100% about consistency and clarity. Your team should not feel like they're waiting for the next cryptic message from the top. They should feel connected. They should always feel connected, even if you're not in the room. I remember as a plant manager, and even as a materials manager, there were a lot of times that I felt as though I were on an island. It was just me out there alone. And the only time I would hear from anyone is when something went wrong. The only time I'd get the email, it would come with something like, call me, or the phone call that said, what were you thinking? So it became easy to be less engaged with the rest of the organization, right? Because if I'm on my own doing it, then it's a matter of just getting the focus and get it going. As a leader, we should strive to eliminate that environment for our teams. They should never feel like they're a lone person out on their own. They should never feel like they're fighting the zombie hordes without any backup. Right? It should always be a team effort. It should always be a team commitment, even if you're not in the room with them. So what happens when you don't establish any type of rhythm? And let's be 100% honest for a moment. From experience, when you don't build these rhythms, I can tell you this is what happens. People assume the worst. Remember, we're hardwired to look for danger. We are hardwired to look for the trap. So when we don't hear, we're going to fill the gap in, and people will fill the gap in with the absolute worst case scenario they can come up with. Right? Especially if at some point somebody had made a comment that this is what we're looking at. So a good example of that is I was working at a company that had been bought by a private equity. And the private equity from day one was very open and honest that we are going to do this and then we plan to sell to someone else. So every time, and then just went silent on it. So after about a year, every time someone would come through the facility for a tour, it doesn't matter who they were, because no one knew who they were and there was no communication, and they would just show up with some people from corporate, and they would walk through and they would do their thing. The assumption every time was that they were the people who were going to buy us. Well, what that did was allowed people not to feel engaged to something that had a long-term future. Not to, it made it a job instead of a culture I was committing to. Now, the next thing that happens when we don't have an established rhythm of communication is that gossip is going to begin to fill the gaps. Because if we are good at assuming the worst, we're even better at it when we're with somebody else. And you may not think that gossip carries any weight, but it does, because the gossip fills the thoughts, and the thoughts begin to direct the attitudes and begin to affect the commitment and the output. And remember, as leaders, we're not looking for someone to be compliant with what we've asked. We're looking for that above and beyond. We're looking for that discretionary effort. We're looking for that commitment to something that's bigger than what is right in front of them and what's right in front of us. Now, the next risk is that silos begin to strengthen. Right? I don't know how many different organizations that I've been in and that I've worked with or worked for that the silo didn't rule everything. Right? If it's an engineered product, suddenly nothing gets done unless the engineer gets involved, but the engineer's involved in their own little projects over somewhere, so it gives somebody an excuse not to do anything other than exactly what it is they're doing. One company I was with, we had a situation like this, and because the manufacturing or production had their flow and their rhythm, and they were pretty much cut off from the engineering piece of it, and engineering was overwhelmed and understaffed, people just began to, I'm not going to say pencil whip because they weren't pencil whipped, but they began to agree to nonconformances and began to approve nonconformances, especially a consistent one, that while it wasn't 100% detrimental, there was a huge warranty cost associated with it. And then by the time we caught it, or by the time we pulled the data together enough, it was a several $1,000,000 hit that we had ended up paying over the years to deal with these warranty pieces, only because the different departments weren't working together and weren't sharing information across the walls of their silo. Now, the next issue really is that morale drops. You see it in production. You see it in the use of sick time. You see it in injuries. You see it in turnover, right? All across the board. And hand in hand with that is that performance begins to lag. Again, we get bare minimum. You start, people show up, they do their thing. Instead of arriving at their workplace by 7 o'clock when it's time to start, they're hitting the clock at 7 o'clock, or they're just now putting their shoes on, and then they're going to go on to the bathroom, and then they're going to do their different things. And next thing you know, it's 7:30 before they actually start producing anything. And even then, especially in a machine shop, I found that machinists have a way of turning machines down, or they begin to run less efficient than what they should or what they could. Or worst case scenario, they become very slack in the quality, not just machinists, but everyone. And suddenly your rework begins to go out the window, right, or out the door. And there's things you put in place to monitor that, like your daily, your management boards, where you can walk around and you can see what the productivity was for the next day. But a really good team knows how to manipulate those so that it's hidden until the end of the month. And then if you're like most places, you're not doing your financial review until halfway or 3/4 of the way through the next month. So now you've lost 2 months and you've lost the opportunity to correct it. And then another issue is that you get overwhelmed with fires because you didn't build any fire prevention into your processes. So look at it this way. Inconsistent communication creates relational debt. Every time you miss a follow-up, delay a reply, or leave someone in the dark, trust erodes just a little bit more. But when people know what to expect, they show up better. They lead better. They feel safer. And you know what? So do you. So look at rhythm as a leadership gift. Leadership's not about always having the right answer. It's about showing up in the right rhythm. If you think about the greatest musicians, they don't just play notes, they master the timing. And the best leaders, they don't just give direction, they set a relational rhythm that others can move with. They can move with it because they can trust it. They can believe in it. They have the confidence that their partner is going to be there with them. In fact, Jesus modeled this. He had rhythms of solitude, rhythms of teaching, rhythms of prayer, and rhythms of community. He didn't lead from chaos. He led from the consistency of his relationship with the Father. So here's my invitation to you. Don't just lead with passion. Don't just lead with process, but lead with pattern. Well, what does this look like in a practical way? What are we taking away from this conversation? First of all, standing rhythm. First of all, pick one standing rhythm to add this week. It could be a weekly one-on-one, it could be a Monday team huddle, it could be a Friday recap. Start small to get something going and stick with it. Start building that muscle, that rhythm, that cadence muscle. 2, put it on the calendar and protect it. If it's not scheduled, it won't happen. You have to protect it, your team has to protect it, and you have to get your upline to protect it as well. 3, tell your team what to expect, even a quick message saying, hey, starting this Friday, I'm going to begin sending a weekly recap email. And then once you commit to it, do it. 4, reflect monthly. Ask yourself, ask your team, are my rhythms helping or hindering? Is anyone feeling left out? And when you have that feedback from yourself and from your team, adapt, but don't abandon. Flexibility is good. Flexibility is seen as a strength. Flakiness, it's not. Because leadership, it isn't about reacting. It's about responding with rhythm. It's about responding with intentionality. So this week, lead with intention. Show up with structure. Be the kind of leader people don't have to chase down, but the one they know they'll hear from and grow with. Because you can't lead well if you live chaotic. And you can't live whole without healthy rhythms. So until next time, stay grounded, stay consistent. Lead well, live whole. And if you want more tools like this, grab your copy of Lead Well, Live Whole, and Eagle Leadership. Available now on Amazon and through Sweet Dreams Publishing. And reach out and ask me about my new leadership app, LeadWell Pro, your leadership upgrade hub, which is currently in development. So see you next time, and until then, remember, lead well, live whole. You're built to serve and made to thrive.
Thanks for joining us on Lead Well, Live Whole. If this added value to your journey, share it with a friend and subscribe. Until next time, lead those you serve well and live your life whole.